Some regrets grow quieter with time, but never smaller. They sit in the corners of our hearts like folded letters we're afraid to open, waiting for the day we finally gather the courage to read what's inside. Ronald Reagan had such a letter. Not written on paper, but etched into memory, carried across decades. Tucked behind all the noise and triumphs of a life lived in the public eye, before speeches, before cameras, before the world knew his name. He was just Ronnie, a boy wandering the dusty roads of Dixon, Illinois, trying to understand what it meant to be good, to be kind, to be enough. And like all children, he made mistakes. But one mistake stayed with him far longer than he ever expected. He was about 9 the summer it happened. A restless age. Old enough to know better, young enough not to. The kind of age where one cruel sentence can follow you into. Adulthood, Dixon that summer, was endless sunlight and buzzing cicadas. The afternoons smelled of fresh-cut grass and river water, and kids scattered across town like marbles. Rolling from one yard to the next in search of adventure, Ronnie spent most days running barefoot through the fields behind his house, chasing dragonflies and climbing the old wooden fence that separated the Reagan's yard from the McAllister place. The McAllisters were a quiet couple with a single daughter, Annie McAllister girl, a year or two younger than Reagan. With a shy smile and a hand always clutching a small, leather-bound book she scribbled in constantly. She was a quiet child, gentle, the kind of girl adults loved for her manners and kids ignored for her softness. But Ronnie didn't mind her company. On most days, when the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched long across the grass, he'd find her sitting under the big maple tree behind their barns, drawing pictures of clouds or writing stories about rivers and birds. Sometimes he'd join her. Sometimes he'd talk. Sometimes they'd just sit together in comfortable silence. The kind only children can share without needing to explain. But that summer, something changed. 2 boys new to town, Tommy Parker and his cousin Eddie, started spending time with Ronnie. They were older, louder, rougher around the edges. They'd toss rocks at rusted cans, spit farther than anyone else, and talk like they knew the world better than anybody. Ronnie admired them in the unsteady way children admire toughness. He wanted to fit in. He wanted to be liked, and that desire opened the door to the regret he would carry for decades. It happened on a Friday afternoon. The air was heavy with humidity, thick enough to turn breaths into slow effort. Tommy and Eddie had challenged Ronnie to race them down the dirt lane. When they reached the bottom of the hill, breathless and laughing, they spotted Annie sitting alone by the fence, drawing a picture of a bird in her book. Tommy smirked. "There's that little mouse again," Eddie snorted. "Always scribbling. Doesn't she ever talk?" Ronnie felt a knot in his stomach. Annie looked up, offering a small, hopeful smile when she saw him. That smile quiet. Grateful made Ronnie's chest tighten with something he didn't fully understand then. Tommy elbowed him. "Go on, Ronnie. Say something to her." "What do you mean?" Ronnie asked. "Tell her to stop creeping around. Or tell her we don't want her watching us. Something good." Eddie grinned. "Bet you won't do it." The challenge stung. Ronnie hated being called scared. Hated feeling small. He looked at Annie, still seated in the shade, her pencil moving gently across the page. "Ronnie?" She asked softly, "Do you want to see what I—" But he never let her finish. The words left his mouth too quickly sharp, unthinking, fueled by the need to look brave to the wrong audience. "Leave us alone, Annie. Go back home. Nobody wants you hanging around." The silence afterward was immediate, heavy, cruel. Annie's face changed not dramatically, not with tears or anger, but in the smallest, most painful way. Her smile faded, her shoulders curled inward, and she closed her little book as though protecting something fragile inside it. "Oh," she whispered, just that one word. Then she stood, brushed dirt from her dress, and walked slowly toward her house. She didn't run, didn't cry, didn't look back, which somehow made it worse. Tommy slapped Ronnie on the back. "Good one." Eddie laughed. "Didn't think you had it in you." But Ronnie didn't laugh. His stomach twisted. The pride he expected never came. Instead, he felt cold. Smaller than he had ever felt, he watched Annie disappear behind her screen door, the old hinges creaking in a way he never forgot. Tommy and Eddie lost interest quickly, moving on to climb the fence or throw stones at a tin bucket, but Ronnie stayed where he was, staring at the shaded spot where she had been, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mother found him sitting by his window, chin tucked against his knees. "Ronnie," she whispered, "what's troubling you?" But he couldn't bring himself to tell her. He was ashamed. Ashamed of the words he had spoken, of the hurt he saw in Annie's eyes. "I just said something mean," he murmured. His mother kissed his forehead. "Then say something kind tomorrow." But he didn't, because tomorrow Annie wasn't outside. Nor the day after. Nor the day after that. Every time he passed the McAllister house, he felt the urge to knock on the door, to apologize, to explain that he didn't mean it, that he just wanted to fit in with the older boys, that he never wanted to hurt her, but the words stuck in his throat. How do you apologize for something you can't take back? A week passed, then another. Finally, after 10 days of waiting, Ronnie walked to the McAllister house with trembling legs. He stood on their front step, rehearsing different apologies in his mind, but unable to choose the right one. But before he could gather the courage to knock, the door opened. Mrs. McAllister stepped out carrying a basket of laundry. She smiled kindly when she saw him. "Well, hello there, Ronnie." "Hi, ma'am," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Is Annie home?" Mrs. McAllister's smile softened. "Oh, sweetheart. You didn't hear?" Ronnie's heart tightened. "Hear what?" "Annie's gone to stay with her aunt for a while," she said. "Her father found work in Springfield. They left 2 nights ago. Gone. Just like that. No goodbye. No chance to make things right." Ronnie lowered his gaze, his throat burning. Mrs. McAllister reached out and gently brushed his hair aside. "If you see her when she returns, I know she'd love to play with you again." But something in her voice told him she understood more than he said. He walked home slowly that day, dragging his feet through the dust. When he reached the old maple tree where she used to sit, he noticed something half-buried beneath a rock, her leather-bound book. He picked it up carefully. Inside were drawings of birds, trees and riverbanks, simple but beautiful sketches filled with quiet imagination. On the first page, written in small, careful letters, "To Ronnie, my friend who always listens." His heart broke. He pressed the book to his chest, but the ache didn't fade. He didn't see Annie again after that summer. Her family never returned to Dixon, and over time, people forgot the little girl who used to draw under the maple tree. But Ronnie D. and single quotes, he grew. He left home. His world expanded. But every now and then, during long, silent nights, during moments of reflection, during pauses between breaths, he remembered the small voice that said, "Oh," remembered the apology he couldn't give, the smile he erased, the friend he lost in a single careless moment. That regret settled deep inside him, not loud, not consuming, but present, always present. Decades later, as a grown man, he still wondered where she went, whether she ever forgave him, whether she remembered him at all. One day, he would try to find out. Time moved forward, the way it always does, quietly, without asking permission, carrying people in different directions until the past becomes something they can touch only in memory. Dixon faded into a chapter Reagan visited mostly in stories and reflections. Yet no matter how many years passed, no matter how many new experiences filled his life, there were certain memories that never softened. Annie McAllister was one of them. He didn't speak her name aloud for decades, but he carried it, deeply, gently, across radio years, film sets, long drives, hotel rooms, and quiet evenings when the noise of the world faded and only thoughts remained. Sometimes he wondered if she remembered him, whether she grew up okay, whether she still carried her little leather notebook, whether life had been kinder to her than children sometimes are to each other. Most of all, he wondered if she ever forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because he hoped she didn't carry the weight of that moment as long as he did. The older he grew, the more he understood something children rarely do. Some apologies don't belong to the person who receives them. They belong to the one who gives them. Years later, when Reagan had become a man recognized by millions, he would sometimes find himself staring at crowds, at audiences, at rooms full of people waiting to hear him speak, and wonder why one girl from a long-ago summer still lived so clearly in the back of his mind. Maybe because she was the first person he ever truly hurt, and the hurt came from his own fear, not from truth. One autumn afternoon, long after his children were grown and the house had grown quieter, Reagan found himself thinking of Annie again. It came unexpectedly, triggered by the sight of a young girl sketching birds in a notebook at a campaign stop. Her head bent, her pencil moving with soft concentration, it transported him instantly back to the maple tree. That night, sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it brought a dream. One of those soft, aching dreams that feel more like memories resurfacing. He saw Annie sitting beneath the tree, her dress catching light through the leaves, her little book resting on her knees. She looked up at him, not angry, not hurt, just waiting. When he awoke, the room was silent except for the ticking of a clock. Nancy lay beside him, breathing softly. Reagan stared at the dark ceiling and realized something. If he didn't try to make peace with that memory now, he never would. And he couldn't carry it forever. The next morning, he made a decision. He would find Annie McAllister. Not to earn forgiveness, some wounds heal without words, and some drift too far for apologies to reach. But he needed to know. Needed to close the circle his childhood had left open, so he returned to Dixon. The town had changed and hadn't changed. Storefronts had new signs. Old trees stood older. But the river still moved at the same slow, steady pace, and the breeze still smelled of earth and water and summer ghosts. Reagan walked through those familiar streets with quiet reverence. As he passed the McAllisters' old house, his breath caught. The house was smaller than he remembered. The porch rails freshly painted. The maple tree still standing taller now, broader, its branches reaching outward like arms remembering a child who once sat beneath it. He took a slow step toward the fence. An elderly woman watering flowers in the yard looked up at him. "Can I help you?" she asked kindly. "Yes, ma'am," Reagan said gently. "I'm trying to locate the McAllister family. They lived here many years ago." The woman set her watering can down. Her eyes softened with recognition. "Oh, the McAllisters," she murmured. "Dear family. They moved long ago." Reagan's heart tightened. "Do you know where?" The woman hesitated a long, thoughtful pause. "They moved to Springfield first," she said slowly. "Later, after Annie became ill, they relocated to be closer to relatives." Reagan's breath halted midair. "Annie was ill?" he whispered. The woman nodded somberly. "It was sudden. Very sudden. She was still so young." The world dimmed slightly. "How young?" Reagan asked, voice cracking without warning. 12, the woman said gently. "Just 12. Reagan closed his eyes. Annie had left Dixon at 10. At 12, she was gone. All his life he had imagined her growing, becoming a young woman, sketching birds in journals, finding love, building a life he never imagined she had left this world before either of them reached adulthood. The woman stepped closer. "Are you all right, sir?" Reagan wiped his eyes subtly. "Do you know where she was laid to rest?" The woman pointed toward the north edge of town. "Old Hillcrest Cemetery. Up by the ridge." Reagan nodded, unable to speak. He thanked her quietly and walked away, the ground feeling both heavy and unreal beneath his feet. The apology he had carried for decades suddenly felt even heavier, because now there was no one left to give it to, at least. Not with words. The sun was beginning to lower when Reagan reached the cemetery. It was a small place, modest, quiet. Dotted with weathered stones and wildflowers growing along the edges, he walked slowly between the rows. The air smelled of pine and earth. A soft wind rustled the tall grass. He found her stone sooner than he expected. Annie McAllister, 192-01932. She loved the world gently. Reagan stood there for a long moment, unmoving. Then he removed his hat, holding it to his chest. All the years between 9-year-old Ronnie and the man he had become felt like nothing. Childhood pressed against him again, the maple tree, the notebook, the soft O as her smile fell. He knelt down, brushing his fingers across the cool stone. "Annie," he whispered, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." The words were raw, not polished, not careful, just truth. I was a boy and I was foolish, and I cared too much about what others thought. And I hurt you. I hurt someone who only ever wanted to be kind. The wind moved gently across the grass, almost as if listening. Reagan swallowed hard. "I don't know if you ever thought of me again. I don't know if you carried that moment with you. But I carried it. I carried it all my life. And I should have said I was sorry sooner." His eyes burned. "I hope you know you mattered," he whispered. "You mattered to me. More than I realized then, and you deserved better than the words I gave you." A tear landed on the stone, soaking into the carved letters. Reagan let out a slow, shaky breath. "I can't change what happened," he said softly. "But I can honor it. I can be better because of it." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small object he had brought with him, a new leather-bound notebook, simple and elegant. He placed it at the base of her stone. "For your stories," he whispered. "The ones you didn't get to right." He stood slowly, slipping his hat back on. The sun had dipped lower, casting long, gentle shadows across the cemetery. Light filtered through the trees in warm, fading beams, the kind that make the world feel both fragile and eternal. Reagan looked at her stone once more. The apology was late. Far too late, but it was real. And it was his. As he walked away, he felt something inside him shift, not vanish, not heal entirely, but settle. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about being forgiven. Sometimes it's about finally forgiving yourself enough to let go. And Reagan did. For the first time in decades, he finally let go. Years later, when asked why he treated strangers with such gentleness, or why he paused before speaking hard truths, or why he believed in second chances so fiercely, Reagan would smile softly and say, "Because once, a long time ago, I didn't give someone their first chance, and I never forgot her." He never said more. Never explained but Annie's notebook at the grave, the one he placed quietly beneath the fading evening light, remained there long after he left Dixon, a small apology, a final gift. A story finished in silence. If this story touched your heart, your like, comment, and subscription helped these quiet memories. Reach more people and keep this channel alive for those who need gentle stories in a loud world. Thank you for listening.